We are rolling on
21st of November.
The 21st of November, just before Thanksgiving. It's a beautiful day in Los Angeles. The sunshine is shining. Eat your heart out, the rest of the world. And we're about to hear a film speech from Kyler, who's going to share with us a film that really moved him.
Hi guys, I'm Kyler.
Hi Kyler.
So I remember, as most of you probably do, sitting in middle school in some history class, watching a film about the Civil War, 9/11, or some other historical event. Now for someone who's too young to remember a lot of really important historical events, watching movies was some way that I learned about these historical events. And I think that's something that movies can do really well. They can take an audience into a different point in time and tell them a different perspective about what happened. So the film I'm going to share with you today is called The Big Short, and it's a movie that deals with the 2008 financial crisis and focuses on those who profited from it. So The Big Short, it really moved me. It made me feel disgusted, it made me feel energized, and it made me feel hopeless. And Andrew Barker from Variety says, it's impossible not to admire Adam McKay's, the director's, reckless willingness to do everything short of jumping through flames, riding on a motorcycle, while reading aloud from Keynes to get people to finally pay attention. And while I completely agree with this statement, I think the movie was also able to move its audience in some pretty incredible ways. So the first way that this film made me feel is that it made me feel disgusted. The incident in the film that made me feel disgusted is when Mark Baum, one of the main characters, he's rushing to a meeting, he's living in New York, and he goes to a taxi, and he just pulls a guy out of the taxi, gets in the taxi and drives away so he's not late for a meeting. And this incident reminded me of a similar time when I was at Rendezvous with a friend who came down for the weekend from Cal. And obviously he didn't know what to do, it was a new experience. And out of nowhere this guy kind of just shoves us both out of the way, goes to take his order, and then he just leaves. And after he ordered, I came up to him, I asked him, why'd you push us away? Why did you have to be so rude? And he said, well, you guys were taking too long, so I just felt like I could just order. And this made me feel disgusted because I didn't think someone would be so rude just to save a few seconds of their time. The second way that this film made me feel is that it made me feel energized. The incident in the film that made me feel energized is when Michael Berry, another main character, he realized that people were going to default on their mortgage loans, so he decided that he could short the market and make billions. And ironically, this kind of made me, it reminded me of the time that I first invested in stocks. And I'm very interested in stocks and finance and stuff like that. But this was the first time that I did something with my own money, without my parents' help, and I felt like I had full independence. And it also made me feel like I had kind of beat the system, game the market, and invest in something that no one really had thought to invest in, so it really made me feel energized. Finally, this film made me feel hopeless. The incident in the film that made me feel hopeless is at the end of the movie, all the people who kind of profited from the system, they made a lot of money, but they realized that millions of Americans were going to lose their jobs, their houses, and they were going to lose a lot of money. And this reminded me of the time, last time I shared with you guys, when my sister had brain surgery, and this reminded me of that time. I remember pretty vividly, I was at a jazz band rehearsal after school. I just asked the girl out to prom that afternoon, so I was pretty happy. And I got a call from my mom, and she was on the phone with my sister. And I remember hearing my sister sobbing in the background of the phone, and she had just gone to see a neurologist, and my mom told me that she had a mass in her brain, and she's going to have to get brain surgery. And I was kind of speechless. I had no words. I felt hopeless. I wanted to do the surgery, fix her problem, but I knew there was nothing I could do, so all I could do was kind of just hope that she would be okay. She was ultimately, which was great. So in summary, I've shown you 3 ways that The Big Short moved me. It made me feel disgusted, like the time I got shoved out of the way at Rendezvous. It made me feel energized, like the first time I invested in stocks. And it made me feel hopeless, like the time my sister had to get brain surgery. So in conclusion, there should be no doubt in this room that the film The Big Short really moved me. And although it's hard to watch a movie with such a tragic ending like The Big Short, I think the teaching power of the movie is what makes it so entertaining and moving for the audience. And I think like the movie that I saw during middle school, The Big Short's able to teach the younger generation about the past so that they can learn for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. It's your turn.
Like exactly?
What was the time?
Oh, 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
4 minutes or 5?
5.
Oh,
I got it all in.
no, you didn't.
Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
I like this speech. I think you did the felt sensing very well. I kind of like you moved around and it didn't seem distracting and you making that.
Shut the door. Yeah. Hi, Patricia.
The speech was good. Some parts you might like. We didn't talk too fast, but you talked faster that you kind of like slow down a bit, and you could have raised your pitch a bit more to show your sentiment.
Yeah, good. Kyler, I enjoyed your film speech. I thought your introduction on the 911 history lesson and saying it's kind of sad because many people will say 911 and you know, some people are not even sure what exactly that means anymore, and it's interesting. But one thing I would argue and say is you have to be careful. But it is a good teaching tool to learn some history from film, but sometimes they take literary license. So you know, so you have to always be critical in your thinking and check the facts with, you know, the film's version. But I think The Big Short was pretty true to what happened. On your introduction, I liked it. Your thesis statement was good. Your SIG statement was perfect. Your quote from Variety, you knew it. You had memorized it nicely. You got it down perfectly, and you agreed with it. So you stated your position clearly. On your first emotion, where you said that it made you feel disgusted. And yes, the pushing out of the taxi was designed to make us hate this individual. Almost a cardboard character, really. But this felt sensing that you did at the rendezvous when you felt that same emotion of disgusted at someone with bigger or more obnoxious than anyone could push you out of line. We got the feeling, and so that was good. I just remembered to say, and that's why and emphasize it with your voice, and that's why I felt so disgusted. But besides disgusted, I felt energized. Remember to pivot. On your energized, yes, you shared with us, and we got your excitement of investing your own money and I guess making some money from the stock market. So that was good. Knock on wood. I hope your luck stays up. I leave that game to knowledgeable people, but good for you. I would say that it would have helped your story a little bit if you had told us the name of the stock and given us a little more detail. You had a whole minute 15 seconds left, so you could have filled in some more detail and shared a little more of the excitement with us. On your final emotion of trying to make an emotional connection with your audience, of feeling hopeless, your story of your sister was well told. I can imagine how hopeless it would be to feel that your twin sister has a mass in her brain, and that, of course, you know, might affect you, and you were here living the good life, going to the prom, and boom, the phone rings. And, you know, that in some ways tells us just how, you know, the fleeting nature of life can be, you know. So I'm glad you gave us that felt sensing of the nervousness and the hopelessness you felt because you couldn't do the surgery. But I'm glad you gave us the positive ending that she had the surgery and it was okay. Your summary I liked a lot because it was detailed. It wasn't just the three emotions, but you reminded your audience of what the stories were behind your emotions. So that was good. And your tie back to 9/11 and The Big Short was, and the teaching power of movies was good. Your canais, your desire for constant and never-ending improvement. Don't play with my ring, no rings on his fingers, so we've mastered that. Emphasize the main points with my voice and move 3 times. How'd that go?
I don't have the ring, so I think I did good.
Yeah.
I think I moved around pretty well.
Yes, you did.
I think I probably could have emphasized the main points of my speech with my voice a little bit more.
Right, that will help bring the narrative out and help your audience follow where you're going. So just a little more oomph with your voice on your thesis statement and on when you get to your emotion would be helpful. So overall, a really nice job. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Oh, and you did the Chicago-style bibliography perfectly. Thank you. Okay, next. Don't all volunteer at once.
I have a personal commitment. It's not a film.
Okay, well, you're a film, aren't you? But you don't want to volunteer just yet.
I thought I'd let other people.
Okay, let's hear the PC, sir. Okay. Back into the speaking box. To the center of the room. Power stance. Good. Okay. Jake stands before you. He's looking around the room to make sure all computers are closed. There's no telephones being used. All eyeballs are on you, Jake, are they? Yes. Good. You're managing attention, communicating respect non-verbally, saying to your audience, I respect you. Finding friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name. Feel the love. Start your speech.
Hi, I'm Jake.
Hi, Jake.
Those who are not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. This is a brash and powerful quote by Muhammad Ali, who's considered very brash and powerful in his own legacy. Muhammad Ali took big risks in the ring and out of it, and he inspired millions on his way in his life. I've found that in my own life, taking risks has made my quality of life more rewarding, and I've felt more alive when I do so. That's why I've made taking risks my personal commitment. I'll start by sharing 2 stories that led me to make taking risks my personal commitment. And then I'll give you 3 ways I've applied this to my life. I found that it's pretty easy to just go through life like going through a routine, not really breaking free from your everyday life. But I found that when you do take risks, you might be rewarded in ways that you didn't think would happen. And you might even feel more alive as well. So one reason I've made taking risks my personal commitment is because they do make me feel more alive. When I was in high school, I decided to play 8-man football after playing soccer my whole life. 8-man football was a huge difference from soccer because it was much more physical, and I was very small when I decided to play. I was 5'3" and 115 pounds, so I presented myself with some danger if I was to get hurt. I ended up sticking out with the season though. I tried really hard. I ended up being named running back, cornerback, and kick returner. And I ended up doing much better than I thought. It really energized me when I did so, as when I scored, everyone was really shocked, kind of, as I was the smallest guy by far. So everyone got really excited. This risk made me feel much more alive, as I'd always wanted to try a sport like football, but I'd never felt the courage to do so. Another reason I've made taking risks my personal commitment is because I found they can be rewarding. When I was a senior in high school, I wanted to ask Dara Shields to prom. Dara Shields was like the epitome of the girl that's untouchable in high school. And I thought she was always hanging out with her like college friends even already as a senior. I decided, like, I thought maybe I had a chance. So because of a study hall where we talked a bit, so I decided to go for it one day at lunch. I went up to her after lunch as she walked down the steps from the cafeteria, and I presented her some sea glass that I got from Argentina. I don't remember what I said, but I muttered like, and luckily, she decided to go with me. She gave me a big hug, and it was in front of kind of the school as the cafeteria goes down. So everyone kind of gave me a round of applause. And I felt very rewarded after this decision. So I was very glad I took that risk. In some ways I've applied taking risks to my life. One is my decision to come to UCLA. UCLA is a much bigger school than my high school. My high school only had 250 students. This UCLA is like 200 times the size of that, so it was a huge difference, but I wanted to challenge myself, get out of my comfort zone. Another way I've applied it to my life is the internships I've applied for. I want to work in the film industry as a film producer, but I had no experience when I first came to UCLA. So even though I didn't have experience, I decided to go for it and apply for internships that I probably shouldn't have gotten, but I still went for it. And luckily, thanks to the professor's recommendations, I've been able to get some at Smart Entertainment, which produced Family Guy and Ted. Another way I've applied taking risks in my life is taking this class. I'm not a good public speaker in my opinion, but I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to break out of my comfort zone and become better at it. So I've shared with you two reasons that I've chose to make taking risks my personal commitment, and 3 ways I've applied it to my life. There should be no doubt in this room that I'm personally committed to taking risks. Muhammad Ali took some huge risks in his life, and although many of us might not need to take any quite as drastic as his, he still serves as a good example that if you go out of your comfort zone, put your reputation on the line, you might be rewarded in ways you didn't think were possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, where are we? Yes, sir. Hi, Donna. Over here, yes, please.
I'm Tina.
Hi, Tina.
I liked your speech, but also, like what he said, like sometimes you kind of like drag out your words, and then it would make it hard for me to pay attention sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Jake really improved, and I like that. I see you really knew this speech, and it's apparent that you've practiced it, so I commend you on that. You were very fluent in your presentation, and that was good. You made an allusion to Muhammad Ali and refusing to fight in the Vietnam War, but it wasn't just refusing to fight. They sent him to prison, you know, and he lost the best years of his life for his fighting career. It was a big sacrifice on his part, right? And but you know, it was a risk he decided to take for something, as he put it. He didn't have anything against those people over there, and so he did that. I think you could have made that a little clearer about the big risk that Muhammad Ali took, because I'm not sure it's so well known, although it's fairly well known. Your tie back to that was good. I'll comment 2 big things which relate to your overview, which relate to your Kanai, which is, relax your arms, your monotone needs to change. You need to work on developing an emphatic style of delivery where you go through your speech in yellow keywords and learn to emphasize them. You need to learn to raise your voice, lower your voice, to whisper, to yell, to speak softly, to have a whole range with your voice, so your voice can fill the room. As people honestly told you, but from the heart, not to hurt you, but to help you, you know, it's kind of put people to sleep. Your voice is so soothing, and you don't want that, right? I have an exercise I give my debaters when they have this problem, and I make them read a speech and try to make it as dramatic as they can, as if they were over-dramatizing a speech. And somehow using that technique of reading it and yelling and speaking softly and loudly sometimes brings them out of their shell. So you might want to try that, okay? Your thesis preview was good. Your SIG statement was pretty good. I'd like a little more application to the audience, significant to them, and just say you folks probably would like to learn to take some risks too. Stress a little more of that. And the other big overview before I get to your main body is learn to walk and talk. You walk nicely, quietly, but you weren't talking. So walk and talk, okay? And that will be a little more effective. So your first reason you told us was that you wanted to feel more alive, and you told us about your 8-man football experience, and it was a good story. It was well told, and you told us that you made some touchdowns and you did well and you persevered and got through to the end. So that was well spoken and well told. So that was good. On your second reason, was your best story and your most compelling reason for us to believe that you are committed to taking risks was your effort to take Dara to the formal dance. And you told the story beautifully by setting it up, by telling us how nervous you were, by telling us, you know, what a princess she was with college friends and all this stuff, and the most popular girl on campus. And, you know, I've heard stories where some people have done the same thing and have been rebuffed. And sadly, you wish kind of response, and but you didn't get that, fortunately. And so it was a great ending to the story on the staircase. It was like a movie ending, so it was great. So it was a good sense of drama the way you told it, and it kept our interest. We'll never forget that story from you, Jake, so that was good. On your actions, they could have been more clearly delineated as 1, 2, and 3. They all kind of merged together into you were trying to get an internship and TED Talk, and I didn't really get the third one. I have it here about a car crash, but we got that one got left out or something, or I don't know. But anyway, if you have 3, if you make them in your outline in 3 distinct ways, you'll remember 3 distinct actions that you've taken to achieve your commitment of taking more risks. Your summary was good, your conclusion was good, and your tie back to Muhammad Ali was excellent. Your canais, speak in a less monotone voice, move 3 times. Do not memorize the speech line by line, but speak extemporaneously. How did it go, Jake?
I still am monotone. Don't try to fix it. I guess I'll read Dutch Romantic speech.
Good.
I definitely moved, but I didn't move while talking, so I guess it's like 50%.
Okay.
And then I
good.
memorized. I didn't memorize it like line by line, so.
Good. And every time, and if you memorize it extemporaneously, every time you just remember your outline, you'll say it a little bit differently each time as you grow older and wiser and go around the sun another time. You'll say it differently, but that's okay. because you'll remember it and you'll add stuff. Maybe you'll forget some stuff. And I would suggest you practice with a live person, and you tell them that you want to lose your monotone, and have them raise their hand to remind you to pep it up, you know, perk it up, okay? But good improvement over your last presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Time?
5:29.
5:29? Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. They're fighting to go forward.
Fighting not to go forward. I think would
Fighting
be
not
more
to go
accurate.
forward.
Yeah.
Okay, fighting not to go forward. Okay, let me adjust the camera. Just give me a moment. You fix escape, my friend. Okay. Olivia stands before you, looking around the room, making sure no one's talking or texting. All computers are closed. All eyeballs are upon you. Communicating respect non-verbally to your audience. Remembering to say, I respect you. Find friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name. Feel the love. Start your speech.
Hi, my name is Olivia.
Hi, Olivia.
I never look like I belong in my family photos. As a biracial woman who's both Japanese and Italian, I always stand out. When I take photos with my Japanese side of the family, I stand out as the only white face in the, or non-full Asian face. And when I take pictures with my Italian side of the family, I stand out as the only visible person of color in a sea of white faces. I've never felt like my struggle with identity has been accurately portrayed in film until I saw the movie Belle. Belle is a film about the daughter of a white British naval officer and an enslaved African woman as she attempts to navigate British society in the 1800s. This film really spoke to me emotionally because I felt it encapsulated my experience, and it made me feel helpless, empowered, and proud. Stephanie Zacharek of The Village Voice said that the film is stiff, encumbered by petticoats of expository dialogue, but I disagree. I find the film to be incredibly emotional, personal, and nuanced. The first emotion that this film made me feel is helpless, and this related to one particular scene in the film. In this scene, James, the main character's future brother-in-law, takes her aside. He grabs her arm and says several racist and sexually explicit comments to her. This reminded me of an experience that I had a few months ago on an online dating app where I was talking to someone, and out of nowhere they started bombarding me with racist, explicit comments. In that moment, I felt very overwhelmed and hopeless because I didn't know what to do. I talk about racism in my daily life all the time, and yet when faced with it, I was frozen into inaction. So that scene really accurately portrayed the feelings that I felt and brought those emotions back for me. The second emotion that this film made me feel is empowered. Throughout the film, the main character faces a barrage of insults from her future mother-in-law and eventually decides that she can't go through with this marriage that she's supposed to fulfill. So she breaks off the engagement. And when this happens, her mother-in-law goes ballistic and continues to insult her until she finally stands up for herself. This didn't remind me of one particular experience in my life. Instead, it reminded me of hundreds of experiences in my life when I didn't speak up, when I wasn't brave like she was in the film. Throughout my life, I've faced countless, microaggressions and larger aggressions. Been called an Oriental, a yellow person, a Jap, all these indignities. And yet, I'm constantly frozen into inaction, as I said in my first story. This film made me confront that and realize that I can't afford to not confront those things in real life, that I need to be empowered to speak up for myself. So that was that emotion for me. The third emotion that this film made me feel is proud. Throughout the course of the film, the main character is having a portrait of herself painted, with her sitting next to her white cousin. And there's a moment when the portrait is finally revealed, and she breathes a sigh of relief because she realizes that she's been painted as an equal with her cousin, which is a huge deal at the time. This made me think back to a time in my life where I like to dress up as fictional characters. It's called cosplaying. And in particular, I like dressing up as Moana from the Disney animated film. So there was one day when I dressed up partially in costume and I went to pick up my cousin from daycare. And I didn't think about it, I kind of forgot that I was wearing the costume, but as I was looking around, all the little girls were looking at me, whispering, saying things. I heard them singing the songs from the movie, and I realized that they recognized me as that character. And in the same way that Dido felt, or the main character in the film, she felt empowered and proud that she was being portrayed with strength and dignity. I felt that same way because so often in pop culture, Asian women are portrayed as weak or subservient. So to know that they recognize that power and that what I saw in that character in me made me feel incredibly proud. So to sum up, Belle is a film that is incredibly moving and emotional for me, and it made me feel helpless, empowered, and proud, just to name a few of the many emotions that I felt while watching the film. It's clear, it should be clear to you, that Stephanie Zacharek of The Village Voice was wrong. The film is not stiff. If anything, it's one of the most emotional movie-going experiences that I've experienced in recent memory. I may never look like my family in the photos that I take. It's a fact that this is how I look, and there's nothing that I can do to change that. But as long as I have films like Belle to remind me that I'm not alone in that experience, I won't have to deal with that issue of identity and that struggle for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, where are we? Yes, sir.
I'm Bailey.
Hi, Bailey.
I like your speech. You looked really confident up there, and you communicated your speech really well, and your hand motions were really good.
Improvement?
I think he did a good job. I noticed he used a few filler words a couple times, which isn't really a huge deal, but they're there if that's something that you want to remove. And then you did a good job maintaining a conversational tone of voice, but sometimes that meant that you didn't project as much, which is just kind of a conversational thing. That's, I don't know if that's just something you want to be aware of.
Thank you. Good comments. Well, I liked your introduction. It was very candid, and I appreciate your honesty. Sort of, well, am I Italian, or am I Japanese, or what am I? Where do I fit in? And so I felt for you immediately with your intro and not fitting into your family photos of, as you put it, being biracial and not being enough of anything. Actually, I think you're the future. I think you're the right mix of everything. But, you know, that's in my opinion, right? So your thesis was helpless, empowered, and proud, which was fine. And I love the way you refuted Stephanie Zacharek in The Village Voice. I appreciate you not buying into her conclusion about the film. So I appreciate your disagreement. On helpless, yes, dating apps. I don't know anything about those, but I worry when I hear some of people that I like or have problems on them. But I'm sorry you had that problem, and I'm also sorry that you were frozen when it happened. More to the point, some of you may have heard or known that one of our icons of our society of discussion and debate, Charlie Rose, has been suspended from CBS and PBS.
He's actually been fired a few hours ago.
Was he fired now completely? Okay, well, I'm not even up on the news. Okay, well, he was suspended and now he's fired. So, for a variety of things which you probably have all heard, there's no need to go into them, but they're pretty pathetic, really. But the one thing that I got from reading the account in the Washington Post this morning was that many of the women said they were frozen when he did these advances. They were frozen. This powerful man, they just were frozen. They didn't know what to do. They didn't feel empowered to speak up. They didn't feel empowered to say anything. And now, you know, you expressed a very similar emotion, and I think your felt sensing was good on that one. On your second emotion of empowerment, you were Don't put on two sides. Thank you. I think your personal story of being called everything from all the Jap and so forth was important to set the tone for what you wanted to fight against and drop strength and to fight for yourself, and you vowed to call out those insults, and that was a powerful felt sensing and emotion that you portrayed. On Pride, yes, that was a very distinct story of telling us that you like to dress up in TV motion picture characters. That was a good revelation. That seemed authentic and thus made your speech a little more sticky. Yeah, and so the Moana and singing the songs, that was an electric moment probably for you and for the audience as well. So that was good. And I thought, well, if she can be a role model, so can I. Your summary, your conclusion, and tie back. I especially like you bringing in the village voice again in your conclusion. And your tie back was excellent. Your canais. I often look at the ceiling when I'm trying to remember a point. My hand motion is too limited. I want them to be more active and yet be natural. I want to make sure to get my conclusion and tie back in time. What was the time?
4:36.
4:36. Okay, so how did your speech goals go?
Well, I was really conscious of like looking at people. I know I probably stared at Ardor for a good portion of the speech. But I definitely noticed that I wasn't looking up as much, or it felt like I looked up less. So I guess I'll check the video. The second one, hand motions. I know I started with the hand motion. I use hand motions generally, so I use more hand motions. And then I came in under time, which was a nice surprise.
Yeah, that's a very pleasant surprise, and really good job, good improvement, and nice work on your felt sensing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for fixing the stapler. Okay, let's have another volunteer. Yes, please, Tina. Okay, can you get back into the square a little bit more, please? Thank you. Okay, Tina stands before us managing attention. Take a step that way, please. Yeah. Communicating respect non-verbally. Looking around to make... Oh, you're texting. All right. Finding friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name. Feel the love. Start your speech.
I'm Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Imagine young girls dressed in poofy dresses with elegant sun hats sipping on afternoon tea. Nearby, a young slave girl scurries to fill their cup as they flirt with the young boys next door without a care in the world. This is the image of the Old South presented in Gone with the Wind before it was completely destroyed by the Civil War. So today I wanted to share with everyone a film that really moved me, Gone with the Wind. It made me feel guilty, it made me feel nostalgic, and it made me feel hopeful. The critic in the New York Times, Frank S. Nugent, called this film a warm and grateful remembrance of an interesting story beautifully told. However, I think that it is so much more than that. Gone with the Wind highlights our deepest emotions, guilt, and pride, and challenges us to reconsider who we are in society. So the first way this film moved me was that it made me feel guilty. The instant in the film that made me feel guilty was when the main character, Scarlett, your typical Southern belle, decides that it would be in her advantage to take her sister's fiance. I remember that the first time I watched this part, I was disgusted by the way she completely disregarded the people around her and manipulated people to get what she wanted. but the reason that it made me feel guilty was because it reminded me a little bit of myself, even though I may not be as extreme as Scarlett. I remember this one time, all my friends were hanging out in Midtown, and that's like a 45-minute drive from my house. It was like a really spontaneous thing, and I needed my mom to take me, but I knew she was really tired that day. But instead of respecting that, I was really disrespectful and annoying until she agreed to take me. And at that moment, I was very much like Scarlett, only thinking about myself, and so that's why this part of the film made me feel guilty. So besides guilty, the film also made me feel nostalgic. One of the characters, Melanie, proved to be the exact opposite of Scarlett. In everything she did, she sought to create peace and just love the people around her, even if it might put herself in a disadvantage. And even on her deathbed, she was worrying about Scarlett and how she may feel. So this part of the film reminded me of a mentor I used to have. She was my old Sunday school teacher, and she was very much like Melanie, and all she did, she taught us to love the people around us and just to be kind to the people around us. But the reason this part of the film made me feel nostalgic is because my mentor is actually living in Asia right now, and I don't get to see her very often, and I miss her a lot, so that's why this part of the film made me feel nostalgic. And the third way this film moved me was that it made me feel hopeful. So at the end of the film, the main character, Scarlett, had finally lost everything because of her selfishness, her husband, her daughter, and her lifestyle. And while she's like so hopeless and just really depressed, she picks up the soil from the ground and she reminds herself who she is. And there's the ending scene is her telling herself that tomorrow is another day. And this part of the film reminded me of a day in high school where I had failed a chemistry test and gotten into a big fight with one of my friends. And I remember just trudging home that day feeling like my life was over. But this part of the film reminded me that even like no matter what happens, life still goes on, and like Scarlett, I need to remember that. So there should be no doubt in this room that Gone with the Wind really moved me. It made me feel guilty, it made me feel nostalgic, and it made me feel hopeful. Even though the Old South has definitely changed, the stories they hold today, the stories they hold can still teach us something today. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice. What'd you like?
I'm Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
I thought you had really good stories that connected with your emotions well, and it seemed like you really were feeling them, and that made us like connect to you more, so I liked it.
Good. Improvement?
I'm Tim.
Hi, Tim.
I thought you did a really good job, but you were kind of quiet and maybe just a little monotone. Besides that, it was great.
Okay, good. Kina, yes. Improvement. So you improved over your last presentation. You started with a vision of the South, of poofy dresses, of an idealized South. And then you sort of went into, you know, well, it's not really that way. And then you tied back with South has definitely changed, but they still teach you something. So it was a pretty good tie back. I think I would have gone with the poofy dresses again in the tie back, because that was a very vivid image. Okay. Before I go through the details, I want to say one thing about what you do with your hands and your fingers during the whole speech, which is this and this and this. And I'd like to see you stop doing that and put them by your side and just gesture nicely, because what you're actually doing is you're communicating that I'm real anxious as I speak, and you kept kneading your fingers and pinching yourself in reassurance. And that communicates not a lot of confidence. So you can put your hands by your side. And just, I know it's weird, but you'll get used to it. Your thesis was fine. Your quote from Frank Nugent was good. And I appreciate you sort of disagreeing and saying there's much more than what he found in his film review. Appreciate you going back into the archives to find that. That was good. On guilty, yes, you were a brat and you should have respected your mother, and you vividly communicated and reminded us of how guilty you felt at the time. What was the time on this?
4:34.
4:34, yeah. Taking a little bit more time to develop the guilt there, but that was okay. On the nostalgic, that's a tough, I felt nostalgia, it's a tough emotion to communicate, but we got the idea that sort of you missed your mentor, and seeing the mentor in the film made you feel nostalgic. On hopeful, yes, tomorrow's another day, and you then shared with us the, God forbid, a disaster. You failed a chemistry test and it was the end of the world. Yes, I imagine it was, but we felt your angst at that. But you also shared with us how you picked it up and got back into a hopeful mode, and so that was good. You skipped your conclusion, which is you should have, in summary, I feel nostalgic, guilty, nostalgic, and hopeful. 6, there should be no doubt in this room. The film Gone with the Wind really moved me. And then tie back. Your canai, speak more clearly, better eye contact, and more purposeful movement. How'd it go? Doing it again.
I think I articulated better, even though it was a little bit quieter, I guess. And then I think I looked up more, but I still looked at the ceiling sometimes. And then I think my movement was more purposeful.
Okay, do we need to do the eye drill with you? Would that help? Are you worried about your eye contact?
It's okay.
Okay. Well, we're looking for 3 to 5 seconds, so that's obnoxious. Thank you. That will cure you of it to do the 3 to 5 seconds. And practice it. And if you're practicing with a live person, look at this hand, at the middle, and the right hand, and then you'll get the feeling of, that you're making 5 seconds of eye contact with each person. Overall, good job, Tina. Thank you. Okay, is that it? Oh. How many more do we have? Just one more? Okay. Oh, hold on just a moment, please. Can you take a step toward the center of the room? Yeah, good. And one step back. One step that way. Good, perfect. Okay. Okay, I may have to put your critique on another battery, but we'll see. We hope we get it in. Okay, let's begin, and let's look around the room. Making sure everyone's eyeballs are on you, finding friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name, feel the love, start your speech.
Hi, I'm Brianna.
Hi, Brianna.
Fairy tales. What comes to mind when you think of this? Fake? Imaginary? Not real? Well, little did I grasp that concept when I was a 12-year-old girl watching Cinderella. So, today I will share with you a film that really moved me. It's called Cinderella, and the version I watched was the 1950s version, so the original one. Back when I watched it when I was 12, I felt a certain set of emotions, but now rewatching it, I felt a whole different variety of emotions. I felt three different main ones. I felt intense sadness, joyfulness, and intense anger. So I believe that this film is very important because it has very important themes within it. Even though it is a fairy tale, it is surrounded by the idea that we should not give up despite any hopeless situation that we find ourselves in. A critic in Decent Films, Steve Grandanis, claims that the film is an honorable rendition of the fairy tale and a memorable honorable family classic. And I agree with Grandanis' quote because I do believe that the film did accurately portray Cinderella and its main themes, as well as I believe that it should be a family classic because it has very important themes within this film. So the first emotion that this film made me feel was intense sadness. The scene that made me feel very sad was when Lucifer, the cat, goes and steps on Cinderella's work. So she had just finished cleaning the floor and it was all nice and clean and she was about to finish, and then he just comes and just steps on it all. So this part of the film made me feel very sad because I remember when I was in high school, I was involved in sports and school, and I was always getting straight A's, and I felt like my family didn't appreciate me and like my accomplishments were brushed aside. So this part of the film reminded me of the time in high school when I felt that I wasn't appreciated. And the second emotion that this film made me feel was intense joyfulness. So I remember the scene where the mice create a dress for Cinderella because they see that she's so inundated with so many chores that she doesn't have time to make a dress or pick out a dress. So they create this dress for her, and it just shows that she has friends that are there to support her even through the hard times. And so this part of the film reminded me of all the times that my friends were there through my family struggles, through heartbreaks, through anything. You know, so it made me feel very joyful at the fact that I have these types of friends like Cinderella. So the third emotion that this film made me feel was intense anger. And it wasn't a particular scene of the movie that made me feel angry, but it was kind of like the whole thing, because I remember when I was a 12-year-old girl and I was watching Cinderella and I was like, oh, I can't wait to meet my Prince Charming when I'm older. You know, I had like this concept that there was such thing as a Prince Charming. And so as I continued to grow older, I realized that that wasn't true, and that relationships go through trials and tribulations, and there is no such thing as something that's perfect. So this is the third reason, or this is the third emotion that this movie made me feel. So in summary, I have explained to you how Cinderella made me feel intense sadness, joyfulness, and intense anger. As Steve Grandanis quotes, the film was a very honorable rendition of the fairy tale, and it did show the main themes of not giving up, especially when you feel like you're in a hopeless situation. So all in all, we should, of course, enjoy the entertainment these fairy tales have, but also educate like younger children that are watching these fairy tales that this isn't an accurate representation of reality, and we need to differentiate between what is real and what isn't.
Thank you. Time?
4:28.
4:28. Thank you. Okay. What'd you like?
Hi, I'm Nolan.
Hi, Nolan.
I really liked your stories, and I really liked your conclusion.
Improvement.
Hi, my name is Harnor.
Hi, Harnor.
I think you're very relatable and likable speaker, but I think something that could have helped your relatability is like maybe if you gave us like a concrete example of when your family didn't appreciate you, or like a concrete example of like when your friends helped you.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Well, Brianna, I think that Harnor, was something I was going to talk about, so I'll start there. But I liked your speech, and I agree with Harnor. You are a likable speaker, and you have a lot of, I sense a lot of integrity and togetherness as a speaker, credibility as you speak, and I like that. However, just in terms of the 3 examples that you gave, they would have been made more real by a little more details about how hard you slaved at being in honors programs and earning straight A's and doing all these extracurricular activities, and your family are just going, whatever, and how mad that would make you. And you needed to return to that emotion, which you said made you really sad, that they didn't appreciate what you were taking on. And then you want to remember to pivot sad, joyful. And same with where your friends have been there. And then the anger was, yeah, I thought you articulated your last point well, that, and there's always that moment when we come to realize that, Charlie Rose isn't Charlie Rose or something, I don't know. Prince Charming has feet of clay or something, I don't know, but it's sad when I won't say who it was, but I witnessed somebody crying over the news about Charlie Rose, in disbelief, but very, very sad about it. So, someone I know took it really hard. So, anyway, back to your speech, your intro. I think you said fairy tales. What comes to mind when you think of them? Fake, not real, imaginary? Well, not to me as a 12-year-old, and then you tied back to that, so that was good. I think I would have gone more with a stronger word, the strong word there of fake, and done a stronger thing on fake, 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 fake. They are useful. There's a book by Bruno Bettelheim about fairy tales and children that's a useful text, and as a parent and knowing what fairy tales to read to your children at what time and what they mean to them during their psychosocial stages of development, So they do serve a purpose, but then you have to give up the myth at a later time. Let's go to your canais. To improve, I need to limit my swaying and stay in the power stance. Avoid using the filler word Feel confident, actually mean what I say. Be assertive in the position I'm taking. How'd it go?
I think it went pretty well. I didn't feel myself swaying. And also I feel like my hand movements weren't as much as they were before.
Right.
And the I don't remember saying at all, but I'm pretty sure I might have slipped in a few. But definitely improved from the first speech. And then the third one was being assertive in what the claim. I believe I gave strong evidence and support for the claim, or the critics' claim. So
right.
That was good.
Yeah. I think you really did mean what you say, and that's what I meant when I said I sensed a certain integrity coming from you, that you really were believing what you were saying about the myth of the fairy tale. Just the one thing I'd say is still work on your ability to felt sense and to make an emotional connection, because you know now from our sticky text how important making an emotional connection is to making your speech sticky and thus more memorable. And the more sticky you can make it, the more memorable it will be. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, is that everyone? Is there any more? Do you have a speech to make up?
No, I already did it.
Oh, praise the Lord. Okay, good. Okay, so that ends this section of the class. So now we will do our discussion of the TED Talk in the remaining 30 minutes we have. Oh my Lord.